Hey, here we are at chapter 6, and we are going to be looking at deviance. So, first of all, what is deviance? Deviance is essentially a violation of social norms. The key thing about deviance is that it changes over time and it changes across cultures. So what we may deem to be deviant in our society wouldn't be deemed as deviant in another society. Also, what we deem as deviant in 2014 is probably a lot different than what was deemed as deviant in 1914. So if we want to look at deviance through a functionalist perspective, so remember that functionalists believe that everything works in society to keep society moving forward. So deviance as a function would mean that we need people to commit deviant acts because it brings society together and it kind of rallies around, hey, what's right and what's wrong. So also, when we're looking at deviance, when there is a violation of a social norm, there can be formal sanctions or informal sanctions. Formal sanctions would have to do with something that's like breaking a law and having a criminal intent, or also going to jail or something. An informal sanction would be like, say people perceive you to be deviant, you might not be invited back to a party. So Durkheim was one of the first sociologists to ever study suicide, and essentially what was found in his study was that white Protestant males, upper class generally, were more likely to commit suicide, and that is because of the fact that this group of the population tends to be more isolated. When we look at people that occupy lower class positions, sorry about that, they generally have tighter social groups. And so the feeling of social isolation is more likely to end up with somebody committing suicide. So another look at deviance was conducted by Robert Merton, and he looked at strain theory. Essentially what strain theory is, it's a way of seeing how when people have this need for social, cultural goals and they don't have the means with which to achieve them, they're more likely to commit deviant acts. So think about, I can just look at for myself. So all the pressure to have these things for my kids. My kids might want iPhones, and here I am like, oh my gosh, I'm on a teacher's salary. How the heck am I going to afford to buy my kids iPhones? So maybe I might commit a crime and steal an iPhone. I haven't, but I'm just saying that's an example of when we have all these pressure for all these, materialistic possessions, and we don't have the means with which to achieve them, we're more likely to commit deviant acts. So we also, within his theory, there's the ritualists. These are people that reject the goals but not the means. So say you go to class and you just do the minimal work, but you don't really care about making a lot of money when you're finished with your education. That would be a ritualist. A rebel wants social change. A rebel wants to just kind of abolish the institutions in society and work towards total change. A retreatist is someone who stops participating in society. This would be, you could consider homeless to be part of the retreatist. Innovators are people who are going to want the cultural goals, and this is, looking at, once like talking about strain theory. So say, I start selling drugs to make money so that I can attain the cultural goals. A conformist is someone who accepts the goals and the means with which to achieve them. So I'm going to go ahead and assume, since all of you are in college courses, you are all conformists because you understand the importance of higher education in achieving the cultural goals. Okay, so looking at my notes so I don't skip anything. So a really awesome study that was done about deviance, which was arguably unethical, but still some pretty fascinating results nonetheless, was Zimbardo's Stanford prison experiment. So in a nutshell, what was done was that students agreed to participate in this study, and so they tried to make it as real life as possible. So the people that were, there was people that were the guards in prisons and the people that were the prisoners. So they literally went to these people's houses in the middle of the night, took them and put them in the basement of Stanford, and put people in the role as prisoners or guards. Essentially, what happened was that the people that were the guards total contributing members of society. We could argue good people took the role of being the guards so seriously and started humiliating the prisoners, emotionally abusing them, and the prisoners started breaking down just after a few days. So they had to just completely abandon the experiment because of the fact that it just got so out of control. So there's arguments as to whether or not this was an ethical experiment, but it really looks at the way that we start conforming to the labels that are put upon us. And so that brings us back to labeling. Labeling as a form of self-identity. Think of the labels that you take on and how hard it can be to kick those labels. If you get labeled as deviant, it can be really, really difficult to get rid of that label, so it might become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once you have that label, you start, committing these quote-unquote deviant acts. What I really want you to consider is the fact that who decides what is deviant? Essentially, we could argue that the people in power deem what is to be deviant, and, is smoking marijuana deviant? Why is smoking marijuana deviant? Why is that considered to be deviant, but drinking alcohol isn't necessarily considered to be deviant? And really think about how it changes over time. So those are the key concepts of deviance, and anyways, hope you have a great week.